They say it's because you lose the oils in your skin. Your skin gets drier when you get older, and that's why you drop everything. Hi everybody, my name is C. Stephen Blue, and first of all I want to say thank you all for coming out today. You are the reason we're here, and your support of our event is what makes it so successful. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy our event today. I'd like to officially welcome you to Burnin Down the Barnes, a monthly poetry and literary event co-sponsored by the Eugene Poetry Foundation and Barnes Noble Bookstore. We hope you will join us on the second Sunday of each month for an afternoon of poetry, performing, and literature with featured local authors, accompanied by coffee, tea, and snacks in the coffee bar over there. And speaking of that, the manager gave us some coupons today for $1 off on any drink in the coffee bar, and I've got 2 left. So if anybody wants one, I think she's buying yours. So, but I've got one for you, Shirley. And does anybody else want one? Okay. All right. He raised his hand first. So, oh, the gal next to you, she wants it. There you go. So this one's for Shirley. There you go. So we encourage you to support Barnes & Noble by buying a book, a drink, or at least a drink, snack in a snack bar. This will help them and assure that our event will still be here going forward. So thank you for that. We have an exciting event for you today. We have 2 wonderful Oregon poets to share their work with you today, Sabena Stark and Paul Halupa. Their readings will be followed by a 1-hour open mic, and at the end of the open mic, we will invite each of our featured readers back for a few minutes. Okay, so with that, I would like now to introduce our first featured reader for today, Paul Halupa. I met Paul for the first time right here when he read at the open mic back in November, and Eric Muller asked if I would consider Paul as a featured reader, and you certainly cannot get a better recommendation than from Eric, so I invited Paul to read today, and I asked all of my featured readers to provide me with a short bio, and this is what Paul sent me. Paul Halupa, born in the coal mining hills of Pennsylvania. Paul spent most of his formative years in San Diego with a 3-year diversion to Naples, Italy. In 1970, Paul trekked north to Eugene to play basketball for the Ducks, and 45 of his last 49 years have been spent in Lane County. He's coached basketball, but spent almost 4 decades in English classrooms, the last 29 of which were in East Springfield at Thurston High School. With Mary Lou, his wife of 43 years, he shares 3 children and 7 grandchildren. His poetry can be found only in his notebooks, but he's grateful for this opportunity to share a bit of his verse today. So with no further ado, please welcome Paul Halupa.
I can see better. All right. You think so? All right.
I cannot see.
Oh, you can see. When a person offers you poetry, do not ask about its origins. Open a hand, clutch it to a heart, breathe deeply, take the full of its scent as you would inhaling winter's first snow. Then bet a part of your life on it. Could anyone's life be so easy as to carry him beyond such a boon, beyond the need of gentle graces, lifted from earth and set on a breeze? If you must ask anything, ask that. But if you must know, I'll tell you, but only you. I write from a footbridge over a river caught by sunset. First the water moves, then the wind, or is it the other way around? If you knew where I was, you would not think to ask about air rising fragrant from this river, or the twilight gathering gold inside grateful trees. Right now, it is all so very quiet. I have to ask you to keep still. Even my pen whispers on the page. Make no sudden moves. Do not draw attention to yourself. Be serene. Remember, only the two of us know. As for the rest of you, don't ask. It's a secret place. Find me. That poem was called If You Must Know. Good afternoon, folks. Stephen, thank you, and Charles, and Joshua, and for this chance to share a little bit. Stephen sort of spilled it out. I've got these notebooks full of poems through the years, and my wife and I, Lou, in the white sweater, and my son Lad next to her, we were in the store browsing around one time late last summer, and Mary Lou saw the sign that indicated open readings and what have you, and I, with great trepidation, I showed up in August, signed my name, read 3 poems, returned a couple of 3 times through the fall and winter, and here I am. And I'm grateful for Stephen to offer this chance to share a bit. In preparing, I have to admit I was visited by at least the muses of 3 different poets. Mary Oliver came along happily first, and she encouraged me. She said that the key things about poetry are simply these: pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. Well, she made it sound very easy until I remember what Randall Jarrell said, when he said that, well, his take is that a poet is a man who manages in a lifetime of standing out in thunderstorms to be struck by lightning 5 or 6 times. And then there's Carl Sandburg, who called poetry a packed sack of invisible keepsakes. My first keepsake came from a bridge over the Chewik River in Winthrop, Washington, if any of you know the spot. And now to a mountainside. Washington Pass, North Cascades. Even in summer, the high air reminds you of snow. Blows brittle and fresh over these summits, looking like you are for something as wordless as a yesterday or tomorrow. You owe it to yourself to stand trembling among these pines at dawn as alpenglow releases a line of peaks into a chiffon sky. When beauty turns in upon itself in a silence only mornings know. Below you lie green tranquilities too deep and too lovely to name. Mind the wind as it teases the trees. Start with that long, fertile valley and follow it through the cold. Trace its slopes to the highest ridges and then listen to what your life says, climbing to clouds, secrets in tow. Peaks relax in light, succumb, let go. The light takes everything you see, descends the mountain searching for you. You've come a long way to see this, to feel yourself belong. Go slow. And now to a river again, closer to home. The poem I'm about to share with you was written next to the Mackenzie, and those of you who know it pretty well can guess the spots just below, just downstream from Olali. And the poem's called The Message Below Olali. Very original. Life's best silences harbor sound. The solemn sighs wind leaves, sifting a forest's dim secrets. The resolute sweep of water over patient, sun-washed stone. Here where the Mackenzie unwinds, slows between cataracts and rapids, where music moves through silences, I hear the river say, stand near me, along a bank. Find a place where water pools and offers you a glassy mirror. Then look deep into the liquid. In a moment you will see someone looking back. Do not hurry. This is important. The shining face that you see flickering from light belongs to you. It is yours. Your image. There is no illusion. You live deep within my currents. You are neither alone nor forgotten. Inside one world lies another. This is what you learned. See how water holds you? Now let light release you. The river knows the way. Thank you very much. Over the years, I've written a good number. I can't count them. I've misplaced everything. I've written an awful lot of tribute poems, poems about people I've known and admired. For the last 29 years, I taught English, as Stephen said, at Thurston High, and language arts and English. And I've taught language arts and English for almost 40 years in high schools. And that means, if you're trying to do the math, that I'm probably responsible for the demise of a small town of about 8,000 folks. But among and it was a wonderful, wonderful career for me. I enjoyed it immensely. Why the heck did I retire? I don't know. Here's a poem, though, from 2001 entitled, So Megan Sleeps, a student of mine. She tips her head to one side and tenders her eyes towards sleep. Her dark hair hangs long and deep. She rests on a sweatered arm. Her desk faces mine, less than 2 steps away. And I watch as she slips toward another world, certain as the afternoon, certain as the Indian summer trembling outside the windows. It is my job to command notice, garner the vigilance a classroom requires, but education assumes many forms. So Megan sleeps. The short story assigned to her goes unread as she drifts toward another narrative, into another theme. I glance about the room. Her sudden slumber goes unnoticed. So I wonder, have to wonder, her breath shallow and light, what image greets her on the other side, holds her? And if, when she returns, I will be brave enough to ask about a dream, which, if it is as lovely as the girl who now dreams it, might be the dream that changes the world. I call this a lesson plan. Well, let me follow Megan with a short poem I dedicated to my wife, Lou. The images of the poem Imagine are from a drive down the Mackenzie River. As so often is the case, Lou is driving and I'm jotting notes in a notebook. Thanks, Lou. Here we go. Imagine for Lou. Imagine a green canyon spilling fresh from mountains, then make it greener. Imagine a blue stream dancing through sifted light, then turn it bluer. Imagine a violet sky wafting behind lilting hills, then darken the violet. Imagine a golden air sung with such joy that our every breath turns us so young. The taste of innocence hangs like an halcyon elixir and sachets on our tongues. My mom passed in 1992. It's called Something from Rose, 1929 to 1992. No beauty exists that is like any other. Every moment unique, irretrievable, past. Snow sifting pines or solemn waves splintering blue majesties of air. A line of gilded maples painting autumn, or the laughter of children against the swaying grasses of the Dakotas. Long ago seems far away. Memories soften like bright clusters of cumulus on an April sky. Yes, long ago is far away, but beauty lasts, and love. And I think I learned this from my mother. I absolutely love landscapes and sky. I've come to think of them as airscapes, but I've got airscapes and landscapes and waterscapes and fire escapes and I don't know. But one of my favorite short pieces that came from a landscape I absolutely love comes from Oregon's high desert. In that wonderful stretch between south of the gorge and say north of Madras. I like this piece because it makes me happy. It may not do a darn thing for you, but I'm reading this one for me. It's called Between a Place You Know and Shaniko. South of the Columbia, white cumulus drift flat-bottomed and picturesque on high desert turn emerald by spring rain. Desert and sky become two hands pressed together. And as we drive between the palms, life compresses, expands. I don't know which or why, and don't ask me how I know, but it does. A thing of chest and sky. The view is immense, and the towns, hardly towns at all, click by. Wasco, Morrow, Grass Valley. And as we near Shaniko, I trace vast distances until they blur into abstraction. The mountains in long rows. Time spreads out. Passes unnoticed through beige lands. Who sees? Who knows? Not the sage, nor the juniper, nor the big cascades looming west, nor the lazing cattle so near sleep on the undulating hills north of the Ochocos. And then, airscapes, there's the wind, and there's Wyoming. And I swear the words wind and Wyoming were meant for each other. Oh, what a state. Oh, my goodness. From September of 2017 came Wyoming winds. The magic of Wyoming wind followed us from the slopes of Jackson and Moose to Fort Washakie, and over the big Wind River summits to Landers, through the flanks of the Green and Granite Mountains to the junction at Muddy Gap, and out to the plains at Rawlins, the sky everywhere, illimitable, an instrument of charisma and breath and music, and in the wind, the murmur of another world. Through one stunning September day, Wyoming threw everything it knew to throw at us. The whole of it. Tame mists north of the Hole, thunder south of Moran, a squall of sleet and snow east of the Absarokas. Pale rains west of Jeffrey, but beyond the divide, arching like a dream from Medicine Bow to Casper, rose an image that must be conveyed in a whisper. A blanket of blue, I tell you, which defied a name. Though born in, the coal mining immigrant villages of Pennsylvania that are now, bless their hearts, their collective hearts, just hollowed out. More than anywhere else, I lived in San Diego. My dad, kind of a self-made guy, barely graduated high school, but became one of the most impressive engineers I've ever met, was an engineer for Naval Air. And so I lived a good portion of my young life in San Diego, elementary school, as Stephen said, and then high school, but in between Naples, Italy, care of the Department of Defense that sent us over there, and so on and so forth. But we returned in 1966 from Naples, and among, I guess, the places of the world I would call San Diego home. And many of you who have visited know Balboa Park. And there, near the Prado, There's this big cagey plant place. I have no idea what you call those things. And fountains and lily ponds and how many of you know this place? So look at this. Enough. The next poem that I'll share with you comes from February of 2018, just a year ago or so, in Balboa Park, and it's called Nathan Olison Plays Balboa Park. Inside the wordless concord of palms and pines, and the unearthly sheen of light on eucalyptus, the busker lifts blues into a February sky, baptized by the sea and absolutely free of clouds. In the shade between a lily pond and green gardens, the young bard croons, his voice the wistful whisper of folk dreams and long ago, of paling memories left beside dusty tracks, of pleasures relinquished along some abandoned road. Between sad stanzas, he whistles, lets the wind carry his hard nostalgia. His hands travel the same frets as Dylan and Taylor, soulful fingers rippling, aching, lonesome strings. His face bears youth, but somehow I think him old. When the music grows too much, his dark eyes close beneath the brim of a black fedora, and I'm sure that when he at last looks up, his thoughts take him to a place too far away, too very far away, to ever take its measure or ever find again. That's for Nathan Olison. And then there was this horse in Arizona near Apache Junction. The poem is called Dusty Thoughts. The heat and the dust and the sage beneath the auburn shadows of the superstitions are the long spells cast by Arizona, and here she lives her life, content, desert winds rippling her mane. She whinnies inside her joys, the scent of a man, a strong palm pressed along a curve of back, the voice that calls her to a canter that is nothing but music flung to the darkening peaks. Hers is a life of simple certainties, things predictable as oats and water, things elemental, things here and now, companionship, the familiar hand of a friend on a trail, each day a day taken, lived, nothing more, nothing less. She neighs kindly as sun and clouds allow, easy as first light on the prow of the hills. Her soft eyes tell me of her pleasures, not sought, but accepted, pure gifts. All else she disavows and grazes, oblivious to image, to status, to impressions. Does she know her quarter and appy stains match the pigments of the Arizona sands? Or that bred deep in her blood is creed, as beautiful, mysterious, and surreptitious as her needs, and every bit as real as the white star painted on her brow. Thanks again. Thank you. And if you'll, this could be tough. If you'll indulge me, I have a longer poem, My Father's Hands, in 3 reflections. The first reflection. Some men were bigger, others stronger, but that didn't matter. Does it ever matter to a child? And so I watched him as he turned a wrench, stripped a wire, drove nails, watched him as he worked, handed him things, saw a thoughtful brow wrinkle as he worked a problem for which other men had no answers. And what he could do was remarkable. I recall his curious eyes and the distinctive way he walked, but what I remember most are his hands, and not just that his hands performed miracles with machinery or bikes or radios or clocks, but the look of them, their angles and textures, the pattern of veins, his scarred knuckles, and the distinctive jut of muscle in the web between his thumb and fingers, those capable hands, the ones which could fix the world's problems, were my confidence, my childhood, and one placed gently upon my head without a word could change everything that needed changing. I could not think of the world without them. Without them, nothing would be right again. When the call came, I caught a plane. The 1,000 miles gave me time to think of what I would find, of what the stroke had left him, left us. When I found him in the hospital, I saw his hands first, sleeping at his sides. His hands were the one sure thing in the silence, the one thing that could speak where words failed, one thing the darkness could not swallow, though his right hand would never turn a wrench again. The second. With the coming of May, the season reverts, turns its back on spring. I walk beneath trees beside a solemn river and let a cold rain shape what is to come. I think of Dad, his illness, and what has become of his once strong hands. For a moment, the river seems to flow backwards, and I realize, and not for the first time, that that is what I've been asking time to do. And the last reflection. I can't begin to tell you how much lonelier the world will feel when that one pair of hands is taken from it. But that is not entirely true. I can begin to tell you. It's just that I will not be able to finish. I'd like now, if I could, to return to a river. Almost any river will do. But this poem isn't so much about a river, but Oregon's poet, William Stafford, and I entitled it, and I wrote it not long after he passed, This River, Stafford, and You. These words of yours, riffles upon a page, are not to be read, but spoken. Here, heart words and tree words meet in the river, dance around whited rocks and swirl in sunlit eddies. It takes time to feel them. Reading is too of a sudden. To speak them is to be slowed, to wade in. I like the words which lie in green pools at the bottom of holes, like trout awaiting a single thought to light upon the water. You see it, the breathless moment. After that, ripples. A longer tribute poem follows. I spent nearly 40 very satisfying years, for the most part, in high school classrooms. And from them have come many blessings. And Laura Newberry was one of them. I have no idea what to call this poem. I'll lose it, find it again later, and maybe by then there'll be a title. A Portrait of Harmonies is what I'm calling it now, for Laura Newberry and Dad. And it's a little longer, so I beg your patience. On a bright stage of turtles on a tired Friday evening with cold January rain stabbing at the windows, 3 guitars and 3 voices fill warm, trembling air with vibrant strings and harmonies. In Eugene, the vibe resonates with the 60s. All hate Ashbury or Woodstock. But tonight, my wife and I traveled across town to hear ballads lifted from other soils, songs at home in Austin or Stillwater, Macon or Laramie, and to hear the rich voice mid-stage, the voice of the singer-songwriter with the strawberry blonde hair. Once this girl sat in a solemn corner of my classroom spinning out essays beyond her years, lyrical pieces full of perception and empathy. Day by day she wrote as if driven by an apparition, some specter of grief, unrelenting as this long winter. She wrote while at home breath slipped from her father, the king of the country heart song. Time slid like sand through her hourglass, like a Sunday morning coming down in a Chris Christopherson dirge, and she could not stop the clock. As a child, she sat at her father's feet, absorbing every riff and phrase he carved for artists without surnames. Songs for Willie, Johnny, Kenny, and Eddie. Lyrics for Tammy, Waylon, and Brenda. Tunes for Lori and Hank. Ballads for Elvis. In measure and key, he left behind sweet memories and chronicled sad fortunes, wedding the likes of a poor Georgia farm boy to the troubles and sorrows of San Francisco Mabel Joy. Mickey could, when you'd least expect it, just drop in to see what condition your condition was in. With the stroke of a pen, he could vanquish hope in the red dust of some lonely back road, or make new love blossom in a field of Texas bluebonnets. And then he stitched the national conscience to an American trilogy. Who would think to knit the saddest strains of Dixie and the lament of the battle hymn to the fragrant anguish of all my trials? You know too well the lyric of that lullaby, Laura. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. You know your daddy's bound to die. But tonight is not about that. Tonight we did not travel to hear your father's voice or his music, but yours, so obviously skilled. Still, as you speak and play and sing, I am inexplicably drawn to a dark corner of Turtles, to a shadow within a shadow, to an imagined silhouette, to a face cut remarkably like yours on a man peaceful as a lazy blue curve on some tranquil, forgotten stream. I see his eyes brighten when flushed by a turn of music or a poignant lyric, and I see him smile as he learns of a love found, lost, found, gone bad, gone mad, gone away, and finally drowned in a whiskey barrel of a honky-tonk. He tips his head contentedly to his side and leans against the wall, perfectly at home, until something spurs a longing in him, like the memory of a lonesome train and a midnight whistle. Self-conscious, I avert my stare, hoping he has not seen my intrusion, but I needn't worry. He will never notice, never see me, for a sweet southern breeze stirred by a ready guitar and pouring through a daughter's golden hair is all he can see.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was wonderful. Let's give Paul another hand. Thank you for sharing your notebooks.